Picture this. Imagine the grandest hall you've ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hanging from ceilings so high you'd think they touched the moon itself. Tables, dozens of them, draped in silk the color of midnight, laden with food that would make your mouth water just from the smell alone. Roasted meats glistening with herbs you couldn't even name. Fruits so ripe and perfect they looked like they'd been painted. Breads still steaming, their crusts golden and crackling. Wine flowing like rivers into crystal goblets that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Now imagine standing at the edge of all that plenty, wearing a dress so worn that the fabric had gone soft from too many washes, with patches on the elbows because you'd worn through them scrubbing floors to earn enough to keep your sick mother alive. Imagine your stomach so empty it had stopped growling hours ago and had moved on to this dull, constant ache that made you feel hollow. Not just physically hollow, but hollow in every way that matters. That was me, that night, at the mating ceremony. I need you to understand something crucial here. I didn't crash this ceremony because I was looking for love or romance or some destined mate. I'm not naive enough to believe in fairy tales. I came because I was starving. Because my mother was dying in a cramped room above the baker's shop, coughing up blood into rags that I couldn't afford to replace. Because the healer said she needed nourishment, real food, not the watery broth I'd been stretching for 3 days. Because I had heard whispers in the market that at the mating ceremony, there would be so much food that surely no one would miss a little. Surely I could slip in, take just enough to help my mother, and slip out again before anyone noticed the girl who didn't belong. But you know what they say about best-laid plans, right? Look, I'm sharing this with you because I know you care about real stories. If you want to know what happens next, if you don't want to miss all the twists and turns, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Don't wait. This journey is just beginning. The ceremony itself was already in full swing when I arrived. I timed it that way deliberately, late enough that the guards at the entrance would be distracted, early enough that the food would still be plentiful. I'd borrowed a shawl from my neighbor, one that was nicer than anything I owned, and I'd pinned my dark hair up in a way that I hoped looked sophisticated rather than desperate. I'd scrubbed my face and hands until they were raw, trying to wash away the evidence of my station. And for a moment, just a moment as I stepped into that hall, I almost believed I could pull it off. The ceremony was a spectacle unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. See, in our world, the world of wolves and shifting and ancient pack laws, the mating ceremony isn't just some social gathering. It's sacred. It's where unmated wolves come to find their destined partners, where bonds are formed that can't be broken, where futures are written in a single night. The air practically vibrates with possibility, with the power of hundreds of wolves all gathered in one place, all their instincts heightened, all of them searching for that one scent, that one pull that means forever. Except I wasn't there to find forever. I was there to find dinner. I kept to the shadows at first, watching, learning the patterns. The servers moved in precise choreography, bringing out platter after platter. The guests, and oh, what guests they were, mingled and laughed, their clothes shimmering with wealth I couldn't even comprehend. The unmated females were easy to spot, dressed in white as tradition demanded, their faces painted with hope and nerves. The unmated males circled like predators, which I suppose they were, their eyes assessing, searching, hunting for their perfect match. And then there was the head table. Even from where I stood in the shadows, I couldn't help but stare. Because sitting at the center, in a chair that was practically a throne, was him. The Alpha King. Cale Blackthorn. I'd heard stories, of course. Everyone had. The youngest Alpha King in 3 centuries. The most powerful wolf in all the territories. They said he could shift faster than thought, that his wolf was black as midnight and twice as deadly. They said he'd united the fractured packs through a combination of strategic brilliance and sheer, terrifying force. They said he was cold, calculating, that he viewed everything, including people, as pieces on a chessboard to be moved and manipulated. They said he'd never found his mate, and at 28, that was unusual, concerning. Some whispered that maybe he didn't have one, that maybe someone that powerful was meant to stand alone. From where I stood, I could see why the stories painted him the way they did. Even seated, his presence dominated the room. He was tall, I could tell that much, with broad shoulders that filled out his formal jacket in a way that suggested raw strength barely contained. His hair was dark, almost black, cut short, but with just enough length that it looked deliberately styled to seem careless. Sharp cheekbones. A jaw that could have been carved from granite. And eyes, even from a distance, even in the flickering light of 100 candles, I could feel the weight of those eyes. He looked bored, detached, like he was watching a play he'd seen too many times before and knew all the endings to. I told myself not to stare, told myself to focus on the task at hand. But there was something magnetic about him, something that made it hard to look away. Shaking off the distraction, I moved closer to the food tables. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Each step felt like it took an eternity. But I'd made it this far. Just a little further. Just grab something, anything, and disappear back into the night. I was 3 steps away from a platter of roasted pheasant when a hand clamped down on my arm. And just what do you think you're doing? The voice was sharp, accusatory. I turned to find a server glaring at me, an older woman with her hair pulled back, so tight it seemed to stretch her face, her expression twisted with disgust that she didn't even try to hide. I was just. The words stuck in my throat. What could I say? The truth would get me thrown out, or worse. You don't belong here. She said it loud enough that several nearby guests turned to look. I felt my face burn with humiliation. This ceremony is for pack members only. For those of breeding and standing. Please, I whispered, trying to keep my voice down, trying not to draw more attention. I'm not causing any trouble. You just what? Thought you could steal food meant for your betters. Her grip on my arm tightened, her nails digging in even through the fabric of my borrowed shawl. I know your type. Scavengers. Always trying to take what isn't yours. The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Because she was right, wasn't she? That's exactly what I was doing. Trying to take what wasn't mine. And the shame of it, the burning, crushing shame, made me want to disappear into the floor. I have a sick mother, I said quietly, not even sure why I was bothering to explain. She needs food. Real food. I just thought. Your problems are not our concern. The woman's lip curled. Security. Oh no. No, no, no. This was spiraling out of control. I tried to pull away, but her grip was iron. Around us, more people were turning to watch. I could see the judgment in their eyes, the disdain. To them, I was exactly what the server said I was, a scavenger. A nobody trying to climb above her station. 2 guards started making their way through the crowd toward us. Big men. Serious expressions. The kind of men who wouldn't hesitate to drag me out by force if necessary. And that's when it happened. The moment everything changed. The moment my entire world tilted on its axis. Stop. One word. Just one word. But it cut through the noise of the hall like a blade through silk. Everything went quiet. Not gradually, but instantly, as if someone had pressed a pause button on the entire ceremony. I looked up, we all looked up, to find the source of that commanding voice. The Alpha King had risen from his seat. And he was looking directly at me. I need you to understand something about the way wolves work. We're not just animals that can turn into humans or humans that can turn into animals. We're both, all the time, our 2 natures woven together in ways that can't be separated. And that means we can sense things that humans can't. Power, for one. Dominance. Authority. The Alpha King's power hit the room like a physical force. I felt it roll over me in waves, felt my wolf, my weak, half-starved, barely there wolf, immediately try to submit, to bow, to acknowledge the sheer overwhelming strength of the predator who had just spoken. The server's hand fell away from my arm. She actually took a step back, her face going pale. The Alpha King moved down from the raised platform where the head table sat. The crowd parted for him automatically, instinctively, creating a path. And he walked. Toward me. Each step measured and deliberate. My brain screamed at me to run. To flee. To get out of there before whatever was about to happen happened. But my body wouldn't obey. I stood frozen, caught in the gravity of his approach like a small moon being pulled into orbit around a planet. He stopped 3 feet away from me. Up close, he was even more imposing than he'd seemed from a distance. Tall enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, and what eyes they were. Dark gray, like storm clouds, with flecks of silver that seemed to catch and reflect the light. Intelligent eyes. Assessing eyes. Eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. What's your name? His voice was quieter now, meant for me alone, but it still held that undercurrent of absolute authority. Lira. I hated that my voice shook. Hated showing weakness. But how could I not, standing before him? Lira. He repeated it like he was testing the sound of it. And why are you here, Lira? The truth or a lie? What would serve me better? But looking into those eyes, I knew instinctively that he'd see through any deception. So I told the truth. I'm hungry, I said simply. My mother is sick. I heard there would be food here, and I thought maybe no one would notice if I took a little. Just enough to help her. Silence. The entire hall seemed to be holding its breath. What would the Alpha King do? Would he have me thrown out? Punished? Made an example of? Instead, he did something completely unexpected. He smiled. Not a big smile. Not warm or friendly, but a slight upturn at the corner of his mouth, like he'd just heard something that genuinely amused him. You came to a mating ceremony, he said slowly, to steal food. Put like that, it sounded absolutely insane. Yes, I admitted, because what else could I say? Bold. He tilted his head slightly, studying me with an intensity that made me feel like he could see straight through to my bones. Foolish, but bold. Then he turned to address the server, who had grabbed me. Bring a chair to my table. The woman blinked. Your Majesty? Did I stutter? There was no anger in his tone, which somehow made the words more cutting. Bring a chair to my table. Now. She practically scrambled to obey, rushing off with a confused and slightly terrified expression. The Alpha King turned back to me. You came for food. You'll have it. At my table. I couldn't have been more shocked if he'd announced he was making me his queen. I don't understand. It's quite simple. He gestured toward the head table. You'll sit with me for the remainder of the ceremony. You'll eat whatever you like. And when it's over, you'll take food for your mother. But why? The question escaped before I could stop it. His expression became unreadable. Because I said so. Is that not reason enough? It should have been. He was the Alpha King. His word was law. But the question burned in my mind anyway. Why would someone like him pay any attention to someone like me? Come. It wasn't a request. He turned and started walking back toward the head table, clearly expecting me to follow. I followed. What choice did I have? The walk to the head table was the longest of my life. Every eye in that hall was on me. I could hear the whispers starting up, spreading like wildfire. Who was I? Why was the Alpha King showing me such favor? What was happening? I wanted to disappear. Wanted to sink into the floor and vanish. But I kept walking, kept my head up even though my cheeks burned with humiliation and confusion, and a dozen other emotions I couldn't name. A chair had been placed beside the Alpha King's. Not just any chair. One of the ornate, high-backed ones reserved for honored guests. The server who'd brought it looked like she might pass out from confusion. The Alpha King gestured to the seat. Sit. I sat. My hands were shaking, so I folded them in my lap to hide it. Around the head table, the other high-ranking wolves stared at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. I recognized a few faces from stories and gossip. The Beta, Marcus Stone, a mountain of a man with scars crossing his face. The Gamma, Elena Riversong, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Council members. Pack leaders. People who belonged at this table. And then there was me. A nobody in a worn dress with patches on the elbows. You know, this might be the most exciting part of my story, but guess what? You're not going to get the full picture unless you subscribe right now. Don't wait and miss the drama. You'll regret it. The Alpha King resumed his seat beside me. A server immediately appeared with a plate, an actual plate, porcelain and gold-rimmed, and began loading it with food. Meats, breads, fruits, vegetables. More food than I could eat in a week. Eat, the Alpha King said simply. I looked at the food. My stomach cramped with hunger, but I couldn't seem to make my hands move. This didn't make sense. None of it made sense. I won't tell you twice. There was an edge to his voice now, a hint of the command that made other wolves bow and submit. So I ate. And, oh, it was glorious. The first bite of actual, real food in days. I tried to eat slowly, tried to maintain some dignity, but it was hard when you'd been starving. The meat was tender and seasoned with herbs that burst across my tongue. The bread was soft on the inside with a crust that crackled. Even the fruit tasted better than anything I'd ever had, sweet and perfect. I was so focused on the food that I almost forgot where I was. Almost forgot the hundreds of eyes watching me. Almost forgot the impossibly powerful man sitting beside me. Almost. Tell me about your mother. The Alpha King's voice broke through my food-induced haze. I swallowed the bite I'd been chewing. She used to work as a seamstress. She was the best in our district. But then she got sick. Some kind of wasting illness. The healer says she needs rest and good food, but I gestured helplessly to myself, to my worn clothes, to the obvious poverty I couldn't hide. We don't have much. And your father?
Dead.
Since I was young. I don't really remember him. No other family? No, Your Majesty. Just my mother and me. He was quiet for a moment, and I risked a glance at his face. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Was it pity? I hoped not. I'd take anger over pity any day. What pack do you belong to? He asked. None, Your Majesty. That made him turn to look at me fully. None? Explain. My mother was exiled from her pack before I was born. Something to do with my father. I never learned the full story. She won't talk about it. We've lived as rogues ever since. A ripple went through the wolves at the table. Being packless was dangerous. Rogues were viewed with suspicion at best, hostility at worst. Without the protection of a pack, we were vulnerable to attack, to persecution, to 100 dangers that pack wolves never had to worry about. A rogue, the Alpha King murmured. Interesting. I didn't know what was interesting about it, but I wasn't about to question him. The ceremony continued around us. Wolves danced and mingled. I watched as several couples found each other, that moment of recognition when they realized they were mates. You could see it happen, the sudden intensity in their gazes, the way everything else seemed to fade away, the magnetic pull that drew them together. It was beautiful in a way, the kind of thing I'd never thought would happen to me. You're not watching the other guests, the Alpha King observed. You're watching the matings. Was I that obvious? I've never been to a ceremony before, I admitted. I've heard about the mate bond, but seeing it happen? I trailed off, not sure how to finish that thought. Have you never felt it? The pull toward your mate? No, Your Majesty. But then, I've never been around many other wolves. Living as a rogue, we keep to ourselves mostly. He made a non-committal sound. For a while, we sat in silence. I continued eating. How could I stop when there was still food on my plate, and I didn't know when I'd have a real meal again? He sat still, his presence a constant weight beside me. And then everything changed. Again. The Alpha King stood abruptly. The entire hall fell silent once more. Apparently that was just the effect he had. He looked out over the crowd, his expression serious. I have an announcement. My heart sank. This was it. Whatever strange whim had led him to let me sit at his table was over. He was going to dismiss me, probably with some food as promised, and this bizarre night would end. Tonight, he said, his voice carrying easily through the hall, I have found my mate. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Excited whispers. This was huge news, the Alpha King finally finding his mate after so long. Every unmated female in the room suddenly looked hopeful, desperate, wondering if it was her. My mate, he continued, is Lira. And he pointed directly at me. I know you're wondering what happens next, but if you're not subscribed, you'll be left wondering what happens to me and Kale. Don't miss a single moment of this crazy ride. Hit that button now. The world stopped. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean everything. My heart, my breath, my thoughts. Everything just stopped.
This had to be a mistake.
A joke.
Something.
Because there was no way, no possible way that the Alpha King was claiming me as his mate. But the bond, I would have felt it, wouldn't I? The stories all said that when you found your mate, you knew. There was a pull, a recognition, something fundamental that clicked into place. I felt nothing. Just shock. Confusion. Terror. The hall exploded into chaos. Wolves everywhere were talking, shouting, demanding explanations. I saw the faces of the unmated females twist with fury and disbelief. Saw the council members exchange alarmed looks. Saw the beta lean forward like he was about to object. And through it all, the Alpha King stood calm and unmoved, his hand extended toward me. "Come," he said. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. I stood on shaking knees and placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm, strong, steady. He pulled me to his side and addressed the crowd again. "Lira is under my protection now. Anyone who harms her, insults her, or shows her anything less than the respect due to my mate will answer to me personally. Is that understood?" Silence. No one dared to argue with the Alpha King. Good. He looked down at me. "We're leaving." And just like that, still holding my hand, he led me out of the hall. Away from the staring crowds. Away from the whispers and the shock and the confusion. Into a future I couldn't even begin to imagine. The private chambers he took me to were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Not that I had much frame of reference. My experience with living spaces was limited to cramped rooms and spaces above shops. But this was something else entirely. We were in what I would later learn was his personal wing of the palace. High ceilings with painted murals of wolves running beneath a full moon. Floors so polished I could see my reflection. Furniture that looked like it cost more than my mother and I had earned in our entire lives. Floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the night sky, stars scattered like diamonds on black velvet. The Alpha King released my hand and moved to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter. I stood awkwardly near the door, not sure if I should sit, stand, speak, or just run screaming from the room. "You're confused," he said without turning around. That was the understatement of the century. "Your Majesty, I don't understand what's happening. Why did you claim me as your mate when we're not actually mates?" He turned to face me, glass in hand. "Because we're not. You're correct." The confirmation should have brought relief, but instead, it just deepened my confusion. "Then why?" "Sit down, Lira. Please." I sat on the edge of an ornate chair, perched like a bird ready to take flight at any moment. He took a long sip of his drink before speaking. "Tell me what you know about pack politics." "Not much, Your Majesty. Like I said, I'm a rogue. Pack politics don't really affect me." "They're about to," he said dryly. "Let me enlighten you. As Alpha King, I rule over all the packs in this territory. But my power isn't absolute. It's supported by the council, by the pack leaders, by a complex web of alliances and obligations. Do you follow so far?" I nodded, even though I wasn't entirely sure I did. For the past 3 years, the council has been pressuring me to take a chosen mate. Not a true mate. Those are rare, and I've never encountered mine, but a political match. An alliance through marriage to strengthen bonds between packs. "That seems practical," I offered. "It is. It's also a trap." He set down his glass and began to pace. Every pack leader with an unmated daughter sees an opportunity. They push their candidates, make promises, offer deals. And if I choose one, I create enemies of all the others. If I refuse them all, I show weakness, suggest I can't make decisions. It's a game I can't win. I was starting to see where this was going. "So you claimed me instead. A rogue with no pack, no connections, no political baggage." He stopped pacing and looked at me. "You can't be used against me because you bring nothing to the table except yourself. And by claiming you as my true mate rather than a chosen one, I've made it sacred, unchallengeable. No one can argue with fate. But it's a lie, I said quietly. Yes. He didn't even try to deny it. It's a lie. A necessary one. I sat back in the chair, trying to process this. So, what happens now? You announced me as your mate. People will expect things. A marking ceremony. A bonding. How long do you plan to keep up this charade? As long as necessary. He moved closer, studying me. I'm not asking you to truly be my mate, Lira. What I'm offering is a business arrangement. You'll play the role of my maid in public. Attend ceremonies, live in the palace, be seen at my side. In exchange, you'll have wealth, safety, and the best healers in the kingdom to care for your mother. My breath caught. You'd help my mother? I'd do more than help. I'd save her. He said it with such certainty. The royal physicians are the finest in the land. Whatever illness she has, they can treat it. She'd live in comfort for the rest of her days, wanting for nothing. It was too good to be true. There had to be a catch. And what do you get out of this? Besides solving your political problem?
Freedom, he said simply.
Freedom from the constant pressure to mate. Time to focus on actually ruling rather than playing marriage games. And he paused. Someone I can trust. That last part confused me. You don't even know me. How can you trust me? I'm not kidding. If you want to know what happened next, don't wait. Subscribe now. The drama and romance are about to hit a whole new level, and you'll want to be part of it. You came to a mating ceremony to steal food for your dying mother. A slight smile played at his lips. You were terrified, humiliated, caught red-handed, and still your first concern when I questioned you was honesty. You could have lied, made up some story, but you told the truth. That tells me more about your character than 1,000 background checks could. I wanted to argue, to point out that trust based on one moment was foolish. But I was also thinking about my mother coughing blood into rags in that tiny room. Thinking about how the healer had looked at me with pity and said there was nothing more she could do without proper medicine and food. How long would this arrangement last?
I asked. A year.
Maybe 2. Long enough for the political situation to stabilize, for me to secure my position without the distraction of mate negotiations. And after that? After that, we'd stage a quiet separation. Announce that the mating bond didn't take. It happens sometimes. You'd be free to leave with enough money to support yourself and your mother for life. It sounded almost reasonable when he put it like that. Almost. But there were so many ways this could go wrong. The bond, I said slowly. People will expect to see a mark. The physical sign of mating. That can be faked. A skilled artist can create a temporary mark that looks real enough to pass casual inspection. And in private, if someone questions whether we've actually completed the bond, his expression became unreadable. That's a bridge we'll cross if we come to it. For now, we simply need to be convincing in public. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. Somewhere out there, my mother was suffering, dying slowly and painfully. And here I was being offered a chance to save her. All I had to do was pretend to be something I wasn't. Why me? I asked again. Really? You could have picked anyone. Someone educated, sophisticated. Someone who knows how to act in your world. I'm just a rogue with no training, no polish. I'll make mistakes. I'll embarrass you. Possibly. He came to stand beside me at the window. But you're also genuine. Real. In a world of carefully crafted masks and political maneuvering, that's refreshing. And more importantly, you're unknown. No one has a file on you, no one knows your weaknesses or your secrets. You're a blank slate. That also means I have no idea how to be what you need me to be. You'll learn. He said it with such confidence, like it was already decided. I'll have tutors teach you etiquette, protocol, history. You'll have the best clothing, the finest accommodations. Everything you need to play this role. I turned to look at him. Really look at him. This close, I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw. He looked tired, I realized. Despite all his power and authority, he looked tired. What if I say no? I asked quietly. Then you walk away. I'll still have food sent to your mother tonight, and enough money to get her basic care. But that's all I can offer without the arrangement. Basic care versus the best physicians in the kingdom. A few more weeks versus potentially years of life for my mother. It wasn't really a choice at all. I need to think about it, I said. He nodded. You have until morning. There's a room prepared for you down the hall, third door on the right. Food, fresh clothes, whatever you need.
Take the night.
Decide. I moved toward the door, then paused. Your Majesty, why are you really doing this? And please don't tell me it's just politics. There's something else. I can feel it. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then he said, because I'm tired, Lira. Tired of the games, the manipulation, the constant calculations. For once, I want something real in my life. Even if that real thing is a mutually beneficial lie. I didn't know what to say to that, so I simply nodded and left the room. The bedroom he'd assigned me was larger than the entire space my mother and I shared. The bed alone could have fit 4 people comfortably, with posts so tall they nearly reached the ceiling and curtains of heavy velvet. There was a bathroom attached, a private bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Fresh clothes had been laid out on the bed, and someone had even left a tray of food and tea on a side table. I ignored it all and went straight to the window. What was I doing? What was I thinking, even considering this insane proposition? I was a nobody, a rogue. I didn't belong in a palace, playing at being a queen. I'd fail. I'd be exposed. And then what? Would the Alpha King's mercy extend to forgiving my failure, or would I end up worse off than when I started? But then I thought about my mother, about the way she smiled even when she was in pain, trying to be strong for me, about the way she'd sacrificed everything to keep me safe and fed after we were exiled, about how she deserved better than to die in poverty, abandoned by the pack that should have protected her. I could do this. I could pretend, could play a role, could be whatever the Alpha King needed me to be. For her. For a year or 2 of my life, I could do this. The decision, once made, brought a strange kind of calm. I bathed a long, hot bath that washed away the grime and exhaustion of the day. I ate the food that had been left, savoring every bite now that I wasn't in front of an audience. I put on the nightgown that had been provided, soft fabric that felt like wearing clouds. And then I slept. For the first time in weeks, in a bed that didn't have lumps or broken springs, in a room that was warm and safe, I slept deeply and dreamlessly. Morning came with a soft knock on the door. I woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The ceremony, the Alpha King's announcement, the proposition. Come in, I called, sitting up and trying to make myself presentable. A young woman entered carrying a tray with breakfast. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. Good morning, Miss Lira. His Majesty requests your presence. In his study at your earliest convenience. I've brought breakfast, and I can help you dress if you'd like. Miss Lira. Not just Lira, but Miss Lira. Like I was someone who mattered. Thank you, I said. I can manage dressing myself, but I appreciate the offer. She set down the tray and gave a small curtsy. My name is Sarah. If you need anything at all, just ring. She gestured to a bell pull near the bed. After she left, I ate quickly and examined the clothes that had been laid out. A dress in deep blue, simple but clearly expensive. Shoes that actually fit. Even undergarments that were finer than anything I'd owned. I dressed carefully, trying to look like I belonged in these clothes. My reflection in the mirror was almost unrecognizable. The girl looking back at me looked not quite noble, not quite refined, but not quite a beggar either. Somewhere in between. The Alpha King's study was easy to find. Sarah had given me directions. I knocked softly, and his voice called for me to enter. He was sitting behind a massive desk covered in papers and maps. Morning light streamed through the windows, catching the silver threads in his dark hair. He looked up when I entered, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or approval. You look well, he said. The accommodations were generous. I stood awkwardly, not sure if I should sit or wait to be invited. He gestured to a chair across from his desk.
Sit.
Have you made your decision? I sat, folding my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. I have. I'll do it. I'll be your mate, your false mate. For 1 year. At the end of that year, we revisit the arrangement and decide if it needs to continue. He nodded slowly. Agreed. 1 year, with the option to extend if necessary. And your mother will be brought to the palace today. The physicians will begin treating her immediately. Relief flooded through me. Thank you, Your Majesty. When we're in private, you can call me Kale. He said it casually, but I sensed it was a test. How comfortable could I be with him? How real could I make this fake relationship seem? Kale, I repeated, testing the name on my tongue. It felt strange, too familiar. But I supposed I'd have to get used to it. Good. He stood and came around the desk. Now, we need to discuss the immediate future. News of our mating will spread quickly. We need to present a united front. Today, you'll meet with tutors who will begin your education in pack politics, history, and etiquette. Tomorrow, we'll make our first public appearance together at the council meeting. After that, there will be social events, diplomatic functions, ceremonies. You'll need to be by my side for all of them. My head was spinning. That's a lot. It is. But you're not doing this alone. He reached out and, after a moment's hesitation, took my hand. His touch was warm, his grip firm. I'll guide you through it. We're in this together, Lira. Partners. Partners.
Not mates.
Not lovers. Partners in a mutually beneficial deception. Okay, I said. I can do this. I know you can. He released my hand. The mark ceremony will be tonight. It's expected that a new mating be formalized quickly. We'll keep it private, just us and a few witnesses. The artist will apply the temporary mark, and we'll make it official in the eyes of the pack. Tonight? That seemed fast. The longer we wait, the more questions will be asked. Best to move forward quickly and decisively. He was right, of course. But it didn't stop the butterflies in my stomach. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tutors came and went, filling my head with information about pack hierarchies, political alliances, proper forms of address. I learned which fork to use for which course at formal dinners. I learned how to curtsy, how to walk with proper posture, how to smile politely even when I wanted to scream.
It was exhausting.
But through it all, I kept thinking about my mother, about how she was somewhere in this palace, being cared for by the best physicians, about how for the first time in months, she wasn't in pain, wasn't hungry, wasn't scared. That made it worth it. Evening came too quickly. Sarah helped me dress in a gown of white and gold, traditional colors for a marking ceremony. My hair was styled in an elaborate updo with small flowers woven through it. I looked like a stranger in the mirror. A beautiful stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. The ceremony was held in a small private chapel within the palace. True to his word, the Alpha King, Kale, had kept it intimate. Just us, the Beta Marcus, the Gamma Elena, and a priest who would officiate. And the artist, of course. A quiet man with gentle hands who would create the false bond mark. Kale was already waiting when I arrived. He wore all black, formal and imposing. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Something I couldn't quite read. The ceremony itself was brief. The priest spoke words about destiny and bonds and eternal connection. I repeated vows that felt heavy on my tongue, promises I was making that weren't really promises at all. And then came the marking. In a true mating, this would be when the male bit the female's neck, creating a permanent scar that marked her as his. Since we weren't actually mates, the artist instead used a special ink and technique to create what looked like a bite mark. It stung as he worked, but not unbearably. When he finished, Kale leaned in to examine the mark. His face was close to mine, close enough that I could feel his breath on my skin. For just a moment, I felt something. A flutter. A pull.
No.
I pushed the thought away. I was just nervous. Overwhelmed. There was no bond between us. It's perfect, Kale murmured. Then louder to the others. It's done. Lira is mine. The witnesses bowed. The priest offered congratulations. And just like that, I was the Alpha King's mate. Fake mate, I reminded myself. This isn't real. But as Kale took my hand and led me from the chapel, as I felt the weight of the mark on my neck and the eyes of the palace staff watching us with curiosity and respect, it felt very, very real. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. My mother arrived at the palace the day after the ceremony. Seeing her in a real bed, in a clean room, with color returning to her cheeks thanks to the physician's treatments, it made every uncomfortable moment, every etiquette lesson, every fake smile worth it. She was confused, of course. Confused about how I'd ended up mated to the Alpha King. I told her a version of the truth, that we'd met at the ceremony, that there had been an instant connection. She was too relieved, too grateful for the care she was receiving to question it deeply. Public appearances with Kale became routine. We attended council meetings where I sat silently by his side, learning the complex dynamics of pack politics. We hosted diplomatic dinners where I had to remember which visiting alpha preferred to be addressed formally and which took offense to excessive deference. We attended ceremonies, celebrations, functions. And through it all, we played our parts perfectly. In public, Kale was attentive. He'd place his hand on the small of my back when we walked. He'd lean in to whisper something in my ear, usually just practical information about whoever we were talking to. He'd look at me with what seemed like genuine affection. I learned to respond in kind, to smile at him like he hung the moon, to touch his arm casually, to laugh at his dry comments, to look for all the world like a woman in love. It was easier than I'd expected. Maybe because Kale was a good actor. Maybe because some small part of me was starting to actually enjoy his company. He was smart, wickedly so. During quiet moments in his study, he'd explain the real motivations behind political maneuvering I'd witnessed. He had a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. And despite his fearsome reputation, he was patient with me as I stumbled through learning my new role. We fell into a rhythm. Mornings, I had lessons. Afternoons, I'd visit my mother or attend to the social obligations of being the queen. Evenings, Kale and I would debrief in his study, discussing the day, preparing for whatever came next. And nights were strange. We had separate bedrooms, of course. But occasionally, for appearances, I'd be seen leaving his chambers in the morning. We'd choreograph it carefully. I'd slip in through a connecting door late at night, sleep in a guest room within his suite, and leave visibly in the morning. It was all a performance. But it was a performance that people believed. Except, perhaps, for Elena. The Gamma had been watching me since the ceremony with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not hostile, exactly, but deeply suspicious. She cornered me one afternoon in the palace library. Lira. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Can we talk? I set down the book I'd been reading, A History of the Pack Wars. Of course, Gamma. Call me Elena. She sat across from me, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. I want to talk to you about Kale. My guard went up immediately. What about him? I've known him for 10 years. Since before he became Alpha King. And I've never seen him act the way he acts around you. I kept my face neutral. I'm his mate. It's natural that he'd be different. Is that what you are? Her eyes were sharp. His mate? What are you implying? She leaned forward. I'm implying that I don't feel a bond between you two. I'm implying that this whole thing seems convenient. A rogue nobody appears out of nowhere, and suddenly Kale has a mate, solving all his political problems. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. You think he's lying about our bond? I think something isn't right. She studied me carefully. But I can't figure out what. You're not an assassin. You don't have the training. You're not a spy. You're too open, too genuine. You're not a gold digger. You seem genuinely uncomfortable with wealth. So, what are you, Lira? I'm exactly what I appear to be, I said quietly. Someone who got lucky. She sat back, still studying me. Maybe. Or, maybe you're both playing a dangerous game. And games like that tend to end badly. Is that a threat? No. Her expression softened slightly. It's a warning. From someone who cares about Kale. He's my friend, my alpha. If you hurt him deliberately or not, You'll answer to me. I believed her. But I also heard something else in her words.
Concern.
Real concern for Kale. I don't want to hurt him, I said honestly. That's the last thing I want. She studied me a moment longer, then nodded. See that you don't. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope I'm wrong. I hope you two are exactly what you appear to be. He deserves happiness. After she left, I sat alone in the library, her words echoing in my mind. This was getting complicated. More complicated than either Kale or I had anticipated. We thought we could maintain clear boundaries, keep this arrangement purely business. But the more time we spent together, the more blurred those lines became. I found myself looking forward to our evening debriefs. Found myself genuinely laughing at his comments. Found myself noticing little things. The way he rubbed his temples when stressed, the slight smile he got when he was genuinely amused, the unconscious protective gesture he made whenever we were in a crowd. And I thought, though I couldn't be sure, that maybe he was noticing things about me too. The way I bit my lip when concentrating. The way I'd unconsciously seek him out in a crowded room. The way I'd started to relax around him, to be myself rather than playing a role. It was dangerous. We both knew it, but neither of us seemed able to stop it. The breaking point came a month into our arrangement. You want to be there when everything unravels, right? Don't be the one who misses out. Subscribe so you don't get left behind in this wild ride. There was an attack. We were traveling back from a diplomatic visit to a neighboring pack when our convoy was ambushed. Rogue wolves, real rogues, not like my mother and me, but the dangerous kind who'd rejected pack life and turned to violence. It happened fast. One moment we were driving through the forest, the next there were wolves everywhere, attacking the vehicles, trying to break through our defenses. Kale shifted instantly, his black wolf massive and terrifying. Marcus and the guard shifted too, engaging the attackers. I was pulled from the vehicle by a guard, shielded behind the cars as the battle raged. But one of the rogues broke through. Came straight for me, jaws snapping, eyes wild with bloodlust. I screamed. Tried to shift myself, but my wolf was weak, unpracticed. I managed a half shift, claws extending, but I was no match for a seasoned fighter. The rogue would have killed me. I saw it in his eyes. Saw my death coming. And then Kale was there. His black wolf slammed into the rogue with such force that bones cracked audibly. They rolled, a tangle of fur and fangs and fury. The rogue didn't stand a chance. Within seconds, Kale had him pinned, jaws around his throat. One bite. That's all it would take. One bite, and the threat would be eliminated. But Kale paused. Looked at me. His wolf's eyes, usually a cold gray, seemed to be asking permission. I nodded. I didn't even think about it. Just nodded. The rogue died quickly. The rest of the attackers fled when they saw their packmate fall. The battle was over as quickly as it had begun. Kale shifted back to human form, not bothering with clothes, and crossed to where I sat shaking against the car. Are you hurt? His hands were on me, checking for injuries, his touch urgent and desperate in a way I'd never experienced from him before. I'm fine, I managed. Scared, but fine. You shifted. He was looking at my still-clawed hands with something like pride. Your wolf emerged. Not very effectively, I said with a shaky laugh. You tried. That's what matters. He pulled me against him, and I didn't resist. Let myself be held. Let myself shake in his arms. Let myself be vulnerable. We stood like that for a long moment. His heart was racing against mine, both of us coming down from the adrenaline. I thought I'd lost you, he murmured into my hair. Those words. The way he said them. Like I actually mattered. Like I was more than just a convenient arrangement. I pulled back to look at him. Really look at him. And saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. This wasn't an act. Whatever he was feeling in that moment, it was real. Kale. I didn't know what I was going to say. Didn't know how to navigate this new territory we'd stumbled into. He seemed to realize what he'd revealed. Pulled back, his expression shuddering. We should get you back to the palace. Have the physicians check you over. The moment was broken. But something had shifted. Something fundamental. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept replaying the attack, the fear, the way Kale had protected me, the way he'd held me after. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and went to his study, knowing he'd be there. He always worked late when something troubled him. I knocked softly. He called for me to enter. He was at his desk, shirtless, studying maps. He looked up when I entered, surprise flickering across his face. "Can't sleep?" he asked.
No.
I closed the door behind me. "Can we talk?" "Of course." He set aside the maps. "What's on your mind?" "Today. The attack. The way you—" I struggled to find the words. "This arrangement we have. It's supposed to be business. Practical. But it's not. Not anymore. At least not for me." He was very still. "Lira."
Please.
"Let me finish." I took a breath. "I'm developing feelings for you. Real feelings. And I think maybe you're feeling something too. And we need to address it because we can't keep pretending there's nothing here while simultaneously pretending there's everything." Silence. Long, heavy silence. "You're right," he finally said. "Something's changed. I've felt it too. So, what do we do about it?" He stood, came around the desk. "I don't know. This wasn't supposed to happen. We had rules, boundaries, clean lines. Except life isn't clean. And hearts don't follow rules." "No," he agreed quietly. "They don't." He reached up, gently touching the mark on my neck, the false mark that somehow felt more real every day. "I think we need to accept that this arrangement has become something more. The question is, what do we want it to become?" "What do you want?" I asked. "You." The word was simple, honest. "I want you. Not the arrangement. Not the political benefits. You." My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. Even though we're not actually mates? Even though there's no bond forcing us together? "Maybe that makes it better," he said. "No fate, no destiny. Just choice. Two people choosing each other." I reached up and cupped his face. "Then I choose you too." He kissed me then. Not for show, not for an audience. Just for us. And it felt like coming home. Everything changed after that night. We were still careful in public, still maintained the pretense that we were fated mates. But in private, we stopped pretending that our feelings weren't real. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. We spent our evenings in his study, working side by side. I'd curl up in a chair with books on pack politics while he handled correspondence. Sometimes we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Sometimes we'd simply exist in comfortable silence. My mother noticed the change. When I visited her, she'd smile knowingly and ask if I was happy. I'd tell her yes and mean it. The fake mark started to fade after about 6 weeks. Kale arranged for the artist to renew it, but when we were alone, he'd trace the spot with his fingers and murmur about how he wished it were real. "We could make it real," I said one night. He looked at me seriously. "A real mating? With all that entails? Why not? We're in this together anyway. We might as well make it official. It's permanent, Lira. If we complete a true mating bond, we're connected for life. You need to be absolutely certain." I thought about it. Really thought about it. A month ago, the idea would have terrified me. But now? Now I couldn't imagine my life without him in it. "I'm certain," I said. The true marking ceremony was even more private than the first. Just us, in his chambers late at night. No witnesses, no priest, no artist. Just Kale, his teeth in my neck, the brief flash of pain giving way to something else entirely. A connection that settled into my very bones. A sense of rightness. When it was done, I could feel him. Not just physically present, but emotionally. Could sense his satisfaction, his contentment, his love. Because it was love. We both knew it by then, even if we hadn't said the words. I traced the real mark on my neck, still tender, still healing, and smiled. "No going back now," I said. "No going back," he agreed. "And I wouldn't want to even if we could." The bond changed things. Made them deeper. Stronger. We could communicate without words now, sense each other's moods and feelings. It was invasive and intimate, and exactly what I wanted. My mother's health continued to improve. The physicians said she'd make a full recovery, though it would take time. She cried when I told her about the real mating, happy tears. Said she'd never thought she'd see me so settled, so loved. The council eventually stopped being suspicious. Oh, there were still some who grumbled about a rogue being made queen, but they couldn't argue with results. Kale's rule was stronger than ever, his position secure. And I'd learned enough to be a real asset, to contribute to discussions and decisions rather than just sitting decoratively. Elena apologized one day in her own way. I was wrong about you, she said simply. You're good for him. Good for all of us. I accepted the apology gracefully. We'd never be close friends, but we'd found a mutual respect. 6 months into what was supposed to be a 1-year arrangement, Kale and I were in his study when he suddenly set down the report he was reading and looked at me. I need to tell you something, he said. His tone was serious enough that I put down my own book. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need you to know something. He came to kneel beside my chair, taking my hands. That first night at the ceremony, when I saw you being turned away at the food table, I did feel something. A pull. I told myself it was just sympathy for someone in a difficult situation. But looking back now, I think my wolf recognized you even then. I stared at him. Are you saying? I'm saying I think you might have been my true mate all along. That the bond we created wasn't fake. We just formalized what was already beginning. I thought about it. About that first moment when our eyes met. About the strange sense of recognition I'd felt. About how natural it had been to fall into step with him. Maybe, I said slowly. Or maybe fate just needed a little help. He smiled. Either way, I'm grateful. For all of it. For your hunger bringing you to that ceremony. For your honesty. For your courage in accepting my insane proposition. For choosing me. I'll always choose you, I said. Arrangement or not. Bond or not. I'll always choose you. He kissed me then, soft and sweet. And through our bond, I felt his love wrapping around me like a warm blanket. We never did get around to staging that fake separation. Turns out, when something's real, you don't let it go. My mother recovered fully and took up residence in the palace, where she became famous for her embroidery and her insistence on treating the Alpha King like a regular person. Kale adored her. I learned to be queen. Not the decorative kind, but the real kind. The kind who worked alongside her king, who knew every pack by name, who fought for policy changes that helped rogues like I'd been. And Kale and I built a life together. Not the one either of us had planned. Not the business arrangement we'd agreed to. But something better. Something real. On our 1-year anniversary, not of the fake mating, but of that first night at the ceremony, Kale took me back to the Grand Moon Hall. It was empty now, just the two of us in that massive space. Do you remember standing right here? He asked, positioning me near the food tables. Hungry and scared and defiant. I remember, I said. I also remember a certain Alpha King deciding to upend my entire life. Best decision I ever made. He pulled me close. Do you have any regrets? I thought about it honestly. About the fear and uncertainty of those first weeks. About the learning curve, the mistakes, the moments of doubt. About how my life had been turned completely upside down. Not a single one, I said. And I meant it. Because sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes you go looking for a meal and find a soulmate instead. Sometimes a business arrangement becomes the truest kind of love. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to say yes to the impossible. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe or fate or chance or whatever you want to call it gives you exactly what you need precisely when you need it most. Even if it doesn't look anything like what you expected. Especially then. So there you have it. The story of how I went from a starving rogue being denied food at a ceremony to the Alpha King's true mate and queen. It's been a journey, one I never could have imagined when I walked into that hall just looking for a meal. Was it fate? Chance? A little bit of both? I guess it doesn't really matter. What matters is that I found my place, found my person, found my home, and it all started because I was hungry. Funny how life works out sometimes, isn't it? Thanks for watching and subscribing to my channel. Consider this as your great support to the growth of this community we are building.